House Targaryen is the most famous family of Valyrian descent in Westeros, but they were never the most powerful dragon lords of the Freehold. In fact, the Targaryens were considered a minor noble house among the 40 families who ruled Valyria, holding Dragonstone as a distant outpost on the edge of the known world. What saved them from the Doom wasn't military might or magical prowess, but a vision. 12 years before the cataclysm that would destroy Valyria, Daenerys Targaryen, called Daenerys the Dreamer, foresaw the Doom in a prophetic dream. Her father, Lord Aenar Targaryen, believed her warning and made the momentous decision to abandon their holdings in Valyria and relocate the entire family to Dragonstone, bringing with them 5 dragons and all their worldly wealth. The Targaryens spent a century on Dragonstone, the last dragon lords in the world, watching over the narrow sea, while other Valyrian survivors in the free cities fought endless wars without dragons to enforce peace. It was Aegon the Conqueror who finally looked westward and saw an opportunity. With his sister wives Visenya and Rhaenys, and their 3 dragons, Velaryon, Vhagar, and Meraxes, Aegon launched the conquest of Westeros approximately 300 years before the main story. The Targaryens forged the 7 kingdoms through dragonfire and diplomacy, creating a unified realm that had never existed before. The Targaryens maintained their Valyrian heritage through a controversial practice of incestuous marriage, wedding brother to sister, uncle to niece, to keep the bloodline pure. This custom, considered an abomination by the faith of the Seven, was justified by the Targaryens as necessary to preserve their ability to bond with dragons, a power they believed required pure Valyrian blood. The practice also kept the distinctive features of Old Valyria, the pale silver-gold hair and purple eyes, though these traits occasionally manifested in unexpected ways through the generations. House Targaryen's legacy includes not just the Iron Throne and the unification of Westeros, but also the introduction of Valyrian customs that would forever mark them as outsiders. They brought the tradition of cremating their dead rather than burying them, maintained the Valyrian language as a second tongue, and practiced polygamy in their early generations despite the Seven's prohibition. The Targaryens also brought with them Valyrian steel swords, including the ancestral blade Blackfire, and knowledge of dragon handling that made them the most powerful dynasty in the known world. Their words, fire and blood, perfectly encapsulate their nature as both the burden and the weapon they use to forge and maintain their empire. House Velaryon is the second most prominent family of Valyrian descent in Westeros, though their origins predate even the Targaryens' arrival at Dragonstone. The Velaryons were an ancient and proud house of navigators and seafarers from the Freehold, establishing themselves on Driftmark in the Blackwater Bay long before the Doom. Unlike the Targaryens, who were dragonlords, the Velaryons were masters of the sea. Their power derived from ships, trade, and naval expertise, rather than winged beasts. This maritime tradition made them the wealthiest house in Westeros at various points in history, richer even than the Lannisters through their control of trade routes and their famous seafaring ventures. The Velaryons share the distinctive Valyrian features of silver gold hair and purple eyes, and they have historically maintained this bloodline through marriages within other Valyrian families, particularly the Targaryens. Their seat at Driftmark, High Tide, was built in the Valyrian style, with towers and halls that echo the lost grandeur of the Freehold. The castle's wealth was legendary, filled with treasures from across the known world acquired through their trading expeditions. The Velaryons commanded a fleet that was the envy of every lord in Westeros, and their sea snake banner became synonymous with naval power and maritime commerce. The most famous Velaryon was Qoherys Velaryon, the sea snake, who served as master of ships under multiple Targaryen kings and undertook 9 great voyages that made him the wealthiest man in Westeros. His adventures took him to the far reaches of the known world, to Yeti, the Jade Sea, and even the fabled lands beyond Ashai. Qoherys brought back treasures that filled High Tide to bursting, including jade, silk, spices, and gold, establishing Velaryon dominance over sea trade for generations. His marriage to Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, further cemented the bond between the two great Valyrian houses and entangled the Velaryons in the succession crisis that would become the Dance of the Dragons. During the dance, House Velaryon's support proved crucial to Rhaenyra Targaryen's claim, providing the majority of her naval power and several dragon riders from their Targaryen-blooded descendants. However, the war devastated the house, destroying High Tide and decimating their fleet. The Velaryons never fully recovered their former glory, though they remained significant lords and maintained their Valyrian heritage with fierce pride. Their ancestral Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister, actually belonged to the Targaryens, but the Velaryons possessed their own treasures and heirlooms from Old Valyria. By the time of the main series, House Velaryon has diminished significantly, though they still hold Driftmark and maintain their naval tradition, proving that Valyrian blood flows in more than just the veins of kings. House Celtigar of Claw Isle represents one of the oldest Valyrian bloodlines in Westeros, having arrived in the region even before the Doom, possibly establishing themselves at the same time as the Velaryons. Unlike the Dragon Lords or Great Navigators, the Celtigars were minor nobility from Valyria, but their ancient heritage is undeniable. They still display some Valyrian features, though generations of intermarriage with Westerosi houses have diluted their bloodline more than the Targaryens or Velaryons, and their distinctive appearance is less pronounced. The Celtigars maintained their position through careful political maneuvering and the mystique of their Valyrian origins rather than through dragons or vast fleets. The seat of House Celtigar is Claw Isle, a small island in the narrow sea near Dragonstone, and their keep is said to contain a fabulous collection of treasures and artifacts from Old Valyria. Among their possessions is a famous horn that allegedly can summon krakens from the deep, though whether this claim is true or merely legend remains unknown. The Celtigars are known to possess a Valyrian steel axe, a rare and priceless weapon that proves their ancient heritage. Their collection also includes other curios from before the Doom, including furniture, tapestries, and items of mysterious purpose that survived the cataclysm. House Celtigar's sigil features red crabs on white, a practical symbol reflecting their island home's resources, but their words, Claws of the Sea, suggest a more ambitious self-image. The Celtigars have always been loyal bannermen to Dragonstone, supporting the Targaryens throughout their reign. During Robert's Rebellion, Lord Ardrian Celtigar remained faithful to the Mad King Aerys II, and his son Lucerys Celtigar served as Master of Coin for Stannis Baratheon during the War of the Five Kings. This loyalty to Dragonstone has defined the Celtigars politically, making them consistent supporters of whichever power holds the ancient Targaryen seat. The Celtigars represent a particular type of Valyrian legacy in Westeros, ancient nobility that has survived through adaptation rather than dominance. They are proud of their heritage and maintain their collection of Valyrian artifacts with obsessive care, but they lack the power to truly capitalize on their bloodline. Still, in a world where Valyrian steel weapons are worth fortunes and the magic of Old Valyria is the stuff of legend, the Celtigars' connection to the lost freehold grants them a prestige that lords of greater military strength might envy. House Qoherys was a Valyrian house of relatively recent origin in Westeros, arriving with Aegon the Conqueror as part of his original retinue. Unlike the Velaryons or Celtigars who had been established in Westeros for generations before the conquest, the Qoherys came directly from Essos, specifically from the free city of Qohor, one of the cities founded by Valyrian survivors after the Doom. This makes them representatives of a different branch of Valyrian diaspora, one that had adapted to life in the free cities rather than isolation on Dragonstone or Driftmark. Quentyn Qoherys served as one of Aegon's commanders during the conquest and proved his worth through loyal service and military competence. As a reward for his service and loyalty, Aegon granted him Harrenhal, the largest castle in Westeros, which had just been taken from the Ironborn house Hor through Dragonfire. This was both an incredible honor and a terrible burden. Harrenhal was a cursed ruin even then, having witnessed the horrific death of Harren the Black and all his sons when Balerion melted the towers. The castle was impossibly large, requiring a garrison and maintenance costs far beyond what most houses could afford, and it came with a dark reputation that would follow every family to hold it. House Qoherys ruled Harrenhal for 3 generations, struggling with the economic burden of maintaining the massive fortress. They possessed Valyrian features and maintained some connection to their heritage from Qoher, though they adapted to Westerosi customs more readily than the Targaryens themselves. The Qoherys line came to an end when Lord Gargan Qoherys, known as Gargan the Guest for his habit of attending local celebrations uninvited and exercising his lord's right to first night, was murdered by Harren the Red, a grandson of Harren the Black. This brutal end brought House Qoherys to extinction, and Harrenhal passed to House Harroway, beginning the castle's reputation as a seat that destroyed every family that held it. House Qoherys represents the fate of many minor Valyrian houses that followed the Targaryens to Westeros, hoping to establish themselves in the new kingdom. Unlike the Velaryons, who had prepared for generations, or the Celtigars, who had ancient holdings, the Qoherys were newcomers trying to build a legacy in a foreign land. Their extinction demonstrates that Valyrian blood alone wasn't enough to guarantee survival in the dangerous political landscape of Westeros, and that the curse of Harrenhal was more powerful than any ancient heritage. House Longwaters represents the most diluted form of Valyrian ancestry in Westeros, a minor knightly house serving in King's Landing with a connection to the Targaryens so distant that many don't even know it exists. The house was founded by a bastard born to a Velaryon lord and a woman from the Riverlands, creating a branch that carried Valyrian blood but none of the prestige or power of the greater houses. Over generations of marrying into common Westerosi families, the distinctive Valyrian features disappeared entirely, leaving only a genealogical connection to Old Valyria that had to be claimed through words rather than appearance. During the time of the main series, the most prominent member of House Longwaters is Rolly Duckfield, though the name is better known through minor household knights serving at the Red Keep. The Longwaters have no seat, no lands of significance, and no particular wealth or influence. They are household knights, the kind of minor nobility that fills the ranks of larger households and serves faithfully in hopes of advancement. Their connection to Valyrian blood is something they maintain with pride despite its irrelevance to their actual position in society. What makes House Longwaters interesting is what they represent in the larger narrative of Valyrian bloodlines in Westeros. They demonstrate how thoroughly Valyrian ancestry can be absorbed into the general population through intermarriage, reducing dragon lords and ancient navigators to minor knights serving in royal households. The Longwaters cannot claim Valyrian features. They have no artifacts from Old Valyria. They possess no special abilities or dragon dreams. They simply have a family tree that traces back to Valyrian stock, a genealogical curiosity that grants them no practical advantage. Yet the Longwaters maintain their pride in this connection, keeping records of their ancestry and identifying themselves as a house with Valyrian blood. This persistence suggests that even in its most diluted form, Valyrian heritage carries cultural weight in Westeros. To be able to claim descent from the freehold, even through bastard lines and centuries of mixed marriages, is to claim a connection to a civilization that conquered the world through magic and dragons. For a minor knightly house with little else to distinguish themselves, this ancestry becomes a source of identity and pride that endures even when all physical traces have vanished. House Baratheon presents a unique case of Valyrian ancestry in Westeros, because their connection comes not from Old Valyria itself, but through the Targaryen conquest and subsequent intermarriage. The house was founded by Oris Baratheon, who was rumored to be the bastard half-brother of Aegon the Conqueror, born to Aegon's father and an unknown mother. If this rumor is true, and most historical sources suggest it probably is, then Oris carried Valyrian blood from the Targaryen line despite bearing a different surname. Aegon raised Oris as his closest friend and most trusted general, making him the most powerful person in the conquest after the 3 Targaryens themselves. After the conquest, Aegon rewarded Oris by granting him Storm's End, the seat of the defeated Storm Kings, and arranging his marriage to Argella Durrandon, the daughter of the last Storm King. This marriage was politically brilliant, joining the blood of the Conquerors with the ancient lineage of the Durrandons and legitimizing Baratheon rule over the Stormlands. Qoherys adopted the Durrandon sigil, the crowned stag, changing only the colors from gold on green to black on gold, and took their words, "Ours is the Fury," to further emphasize continuity with the previous dynasty. This pragmatic approach to conquest and integration became a model for how Targaryen loyalists would establish themselves throughout the realm. The Baratheon connection to Valyrian blood grew stronger through subsequent generations, as they regularly intermarried with House Targaryen. Many Baratheon lords took Targaryen princesses as wives, and Baratheon daughters married into the royal family, creating a web of blood ties that made the Baratheons the closest thing to a cadet branch of House Targaryen. This pattern continued until Robert's Rebellion, when Robert Baratheon, who had a Targaryen grandmother, used his own blood claim to justify taking the Iron Throne after his victory over the Mad King Aerys II. Robert's claim wasn't purely military conquest, but rather a combination of force and lineage, his Targaryen blood making him technically eligible for the throne. The Baratheon Valyrian ancestry manifests differently than in the purely Valyrian houses. Baratheons don't have silver hair or purple eyes. Instead, they're known for their black hair and blue eyes, tall, powerful builds, and fierce temperaments. The seed is strong that becomes so important in the main series refers to the dominance of Baratheon features over other bloodlines, a characteristic that proves crucial in exposing Cersei's children as illegitimate. Yet, despite their Westerosi appearance, the Baratheons carry dragon blood, connecting them to Old Valyria through both Orys's rumored parentage and centuries of Targaryen marriages. By the time of Robert's reign, House Baratheon represents how thoroughly Valyrian blood has integrated into the Westerosi nobility. They are simultaneously the house with the strongest claim to Valyrian descent after the Targaryens themselves, and the house that appears most completely Westerosi in culture, appearance, and tradition. The Baratheons worship the Seven, not the Valyrian gods. They embrace knightly culture completely, and they've built their identity around their adoption of Storm King tradition rather than their Valyrian heritage. Yet that heritage remains, a hidden connection to dragon lords, and the freehold that surfaces in genealogies and succession claims, proving that Valyrian blood has become permanently woven into the fabric of Westerosi nobility. And there you have it, every major house in Westeros that can claim Valyrian ancestry. From the dragon-riding Targaryens who conquered a continent, to the minor Longwaters barely clinging to their genealogical connection, these families represent different aspects of how the legacy of Old Valyria survived the Doom and transformed in a new land. Some maintained their bloodline with zealous purity, others embraced intermarriage and integration, and a few fell into obscurity or extinction despite their ancient heritage. The presence of Valyrian blood in Westeros tells a story of conquest, adaptation, and survival, showing how a handful of families from a doomed civilization created dynasties that would shape the future of an entire continent. Their legacy lives on not just in silver hair and purple eyes, but in Valyrian steel swords, dragon skulls in throne rooms, and the very structure of the Seven Kingdoms itself, a realm forged in dragonfire and maintained through the blood of Old Valyria.